Hey there, sexy techies.
Hey there, sexy lady. I feel like I never know what to say.
I know. You always have like a really good intro, or you
Not
used to
tonight.
say like, hey everybody. So
Yours is like all set for you.
right. Well, I did that on purpose because I'm awkward if I don't have something prepared. Oh my gosh, it has been a week, hasn't it?
I mean, you were out of town for
Yes.
5 days, so I had our two little angels.
Yeah,
and
I bet they were angels for you.
It was just the perfect long weekend.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad. I had a lot of, like hotel meals and a lot of DoorDash and
Room service, must be nice.
No, I was wondering like what you guys ended up doing for dinners. Did you guys do like Grubhub?
Well, thankfully, you made dinner.
Oh, I did.
The day that you left.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. That lasted me 2 days.
Okay.
The kids are pretty easy to cook for.
Yeah.
We did have McDonald's one day.
Okay. Oh, what a treat.
Yeah, that was the treat. But that's about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I miss a good home cooked meal while I'm on the road. But ever since like I've, discovered like Uber Eats and DoorDash and things, it's been nice to like think that I have like restaurant quality food being able to be delivered, especially if I'm somewhere where like I can't go to the restaurants. But I was in a place recently. It wasn't in like a busy metropolitan downtown area. It was like kind of off the beaten path. And I was really surprised with all of the, restaurant options that could be delivered through like Grubhub and DoorDash. And I was like, are these restaurants like really that close by? And then that's when, I went through this whole like Google thing and all that. And that's when I discovered the concept of ghost kitchens. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
You have. Of course you have. Because you're like so like up to date with things.
No,
but...
I just learned of them recently.
Okay.
And I don't want to spoil anything because
Okay.
it's probably part of what you found. But yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. Yeah. So ghost kitchens, for those who don't know, who are like me, they are this concept that has kind of been born with the whole restaurant to home delivery service, that everyone kind of participates in now. So it's a really great way for restaurants or like new restaurant owners to reduce overhead costs and resources. There's, like no storefront, no dining room, no like front of house staff. It's just really a kitchen, and it functions as a hub for, other virtual restaurants. So there could be more than one basically like restaurant food preparation happening in one ghost kitchen.
Yeah, it's like an outsourced kitchen for restaurants,
right,
basically.
Exactly. With all the same line staff like cooks, and sometimes you can even do a ghost kitchen in an existing kitchen of an existing restaurant, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah, especially for restaurants that are only open certain hours, right?
Right. Yeah.
You can use it during the day as a ghost kitchen or something.
Yeah, like a lunch ghost kitchen, like if your menu specializes in like breakfast or lunch like delivery. So I thought that was really interesting. It's almost, I would liken it to maybe like a WeWork space for businesses where, it's a building, it's a hub where you have the resources that you need to run your business, but it's all different companies that, can intermingle in this place.
Yeah, maybe like a FedEx Kinko's.
Yeah, there you go. Sure. It's the FedEx Kinko's of
food.
restaurants. Yeah. So, it's really cost effective. This, model, it's typically used by delivery only restaurants. And as of 2022, the global ghost kitchen market size was estimated to be 58.13 billion. And by 2026, the industry is estimated to grow to 89.5 billion.
Oh, I had no idea it was that big.
It's huge. Just think about people late night in the office, like people who just like want delivery, like, or you have your kids and you don't have time to make dinner. Like, how many people will do a DoorDash or a Grubhub delivery?
I've never ordered from anywhere that is a ghost kitchen. Like one
that you know of.
No,
right?
because I usually call the restaurant. I usually still I'm old school when it comes to restaurants because I've had some bad experiences with Uber Eats.
I know.
There have been multiple times where we have ordered something from Uber Eats late at night, let's say 8:30, and like it wasn't going to come until
Yes,
10:30, something like that. And they canceled on us,
yes.
but not like right when we ordered. They waited until
We were
it was supposed to be here at 10 or 10:30, and I had to call you. There's no number to call. It was just a
Right.
mess. And by that point, you're starving, you're hangry. And so I've basically written off until I can be proven otherwise. I've just written them off.
Okay, yes. And if I were to rank the food delivery apps in my phone that I have right now, DoorDash is definitely number one, then Grubhub, then Uber Eats. Like I hardly even like re-download that because it's been so unreliable for me. Prove us wrong, world.
Yeah,
Like,
Uber Eats, listen to this and do something to make this right. But I'm old school, and I'm very customer service oriented when it comes to food.
Yeah,
And if
I get
you know,
that.
I want I want a number to call and like a physical location to go to, like,
Yeah.
and just I just feel like you can ensure that the quality is better if there is somebody standing behind the food that you get, and
I
not
get
like
that.
it came from a black hole somewhere.
Again, which is why AI is not going to take our jobs anytime soon, because humans crave human interaction in some aspects of our lives. The food, industry is definitely one
I'm
of
not
them.
normally one of those people.
I know you're like, I want to avoid people as much as possible, but there's about like 1,500 ghost kitchens just in the U.S. alone. It's huge in India. Again, like with all of this research that I'm doing, and so every year, like there's new tech startups that and shared spaces that are joining in on this sector and really just getting in on the opportunity of this growth. Cloud Kitchens is one of them. It is a real estate company based in LA that specializes in providing commercial ghost kitchens to delivery-only restaurants. So in addition to the space, they partner with restaurants to also get like the logistics and facilities services. So the startup offers delivery management systems. So they, have the drivers in place, or, whatever it is that they utilize to deliver. They are designed to serve as a hub where restaurants can track their sales and deliveries. And it's estimated that Cloud Kitchens, the company, earns up to $5 million in annual revenue. So that's just like one of many startups that I had seen out there that kind of are in the ghost kitchen space.
I don't know a lot about ghost kitchens yet, but it seems to me like it's kind of a commodity. I don't know how you really differentiate yourself as a ghost kitchen other than having a reputation for good quality. And so I'm sure quality is pretty important when it comes to your kitchen, because, some entrepreneur is going to talk about how they started a new concept or something using this I don't know, maybe they say who their ghost kitchen is, maybe they don't.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't really know how you differentiate.
Yeah, there's different, I guess, like sectors that start these ghost kitchens. Like Cloud Kitchens is a real estate company, but there were other startups that were more like tech-based companies and, like different industries that start their own kitchens, ghost kitchens with their own like niche.
Okay. Yeah, maybe specific types of food. Like, do you specialize in certain types of food? I mean, maybe there's not many ghost kitchens serving Ethiopian food yet or something like that.
Right.
And so maybe you could build one out.
Yeah, and maybe like even just the resources that they have. Like if you are a coal fire pizza kitchen, you're going to need a coal fire to
Right.
bake in and things like that. Like you would need the right, I guess, like tools to.
Right. But you're missing a key piece of the in-person dining experience, right? Which is like the
Right.
ambiance, the location,
Of
that sort
course.
like that those are huge
Yeah.
factors when you're deciding where to go eat. And if it's coming from a faceless, business with no physical presence that you're ever going to see,
Right.
then all you really care about is the food, right? The quality of the food.
I know. But then there's also like if you go to really nice restaurants with like, Michelin star restaurants with like very like acclaimed chefs.
Right.
You want that chef to be preparing your food. Like
Right.
if you're
Coming
at
out to your table.
Right. If you're like at a chef table. Right, exactly. And like, actually like being the one to prepare their food, hand picking the the other cooks that are helping in the line to prepare your food. And if you are ordering from a ghost kitchen service, it's the same like cook line that does multiple restaurants. So, what's going to differentiate them like one person's food from another.
Yeah.
Which, you know, kind of like the quality of food not being so great reminded me of there's this one lawsuit that's out there. I don't know. Have you ever heard of MrBeast and the MrBeast burger?
The way that you said that.
What?
like there was a good chance I hadn't heard of who MrBeast was. So I don't know if you've looked up MrBeast on YouTube. MrBeast has 182 million YouTube subscribers. He is the most popular YouTuber on the planet.
Okay.
But the funny thing is, I would venture to say that 90% of those are probably not in our generation.
Okay.
So I was listening to this podcast recently, and this other YouTuber was going around to Gen Zers or whatever. What's the generation after Gen Z?
Alpha.
Okay.
Alpha
we're starting
Gen.
over.
Yeah.
Okay. So going around to younger people and showing them a picture of MrBeast and Tom Cruise and asking them who each of these people were on the pictures. They all got MrBeast.
Wow.
And some of them didn't know who Tom Cruise was.
Oh, that's...
And he did this in front of a Top Gun Maverick like poster at the movie theater where when Top Gun Maverick came out.
Yeah.
And people still didn't like make the connection or know who Tom Cruise was, but they knew who MrBeast was.
That's insane. And yeah, he was relevant at that point too.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, like our 7-year-old is considered Gen Alpha. He definitely wouldn't know who Tom Cruise is.
But he also wouldn't know who MrBeast is, I don't think.
I don't know. So the way I knew MrBeast, because I'm not like a huge like YouTube subscriber, even though we're on YouTube. And so the way I know MrBeast for the first time was our son went, you know, with a friend. They went and the friend took him to a convenience store. He comes home with like a Slurpee, like beef jerky, and a MrBeast bar.
That was the first time that I learned that MrBeast had a bar. Like,
okay,
yeah. I didn't know that was part of his. I mean, he's got a bunch of other businesses now, but
right.
yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah. And so then I realized that he was like a YouTuber content creator first, and then he expanded into different lines of business. One of them is the MrBeast burger. I don't know if you've heard of this.
This is what I was alluding to earlier.
Yes. Okay. So the MrBeast burger was this terrible burger that was delivered out. That was...
It wasn't supposed to be terrible.
No, obviously not. But it was made in a ghost kitchen. And MrBeast has since filed a lawsuit against Virtual Dining Concepts back in July, saying that the company tarnished his brand and reputation. They apparently served burgers that were... And these were the reviews. They were disgusting, inedible, revolting. They received so many complaints about it, and he hasn't received any payment despite the brand's significant earnings.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and so what I also just found out is then Virtual Dining Concepts countersued MrBeast.
That's just what you do. Like that's the thing.
It?
Yeah, I mean, like.
Okay.
Like if you don't countersue, you might as well just roll over.
Oh, okay. I don't really know how. Like,
I'm just kidding.
Suing works.
Not everybody does it, but
okay. I mean, like the closest I've been to like going to court was like Mrs. Doubtfire and like movies. I don't know. Anyway. So Virtual Dining Concepts countersued MrBeast, saying that he bullied them on social media, threatened to terminate their contract if they didn't comply with his demands. There were several tweets from MrBeast to his nearly 23 million followers that reportedly sabotaged the MrBeast burger and virtual dining.
Ooh.
And so that breaches their contract because apparently they had this like mutual contract where they would share like social media pages, and he apparently like changed passwords and like blocked them from being able to post and, you know, do like cross posts with.
Things are getting heated.
I know. I mean, the social media world and the collabs, I guess, is hard when you can't uphold, you know, one reputation and then the other one tarnishes the other reputation.
I mean, MrBeast needs this money from this ghost kitchen. He is out there destroying Lamborghinis for YouTube views.
That's okay.
I mean, I'm just kidding. He doesn't need the money, but like he's got tons of money, but he spends a ton of money on his YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Like it's just part of his thing. Like
wow.
he's just constantly trying to outdo himself.
Oh gosh.
And those are the types of videos that he creates and that people love. Like I think the one that I just referenced, they're just destroying all this expensive stuff. One other thing that they did was they took dominoes and starting with tiny little dominoes up to huge dominoes, like Guinness Book of World Record size dominoes.
Yeah.
The last one fell on an old 7-Eleven and demolished it.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, all that stuff is pretty expensive, right? Like,
can you imagine? Hold on. Can you imagine? Because I've tried to set up dominoes with our son before, and like sometimes, like in the middle, like my sleeve will like brush on one, and like half of it will fall over. Can you imagine that happening?
Oops.
I know.
We didn't have the cameras rolling.
I know. Right.
I bought a copy of a book.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact year. I think it was 2008 or 2009. And you know, like when people say that there's a book that they read that like changed their life?
Yes. Yep. I can relate.
So I can too, actually.
Okay.
I bought this book called Founders at Work.
Okay.
It was written by Jessica Livingston. Mm-hmm. She was a founding partner of Y Combinator.
Okay.
She is a founding partner of Y Combinator.
All right.
She's retired now. She's married to Paul Graham.
Okay. Who is also a Y Combinator founder.
Correct.
Yes. I know names.
Yes, you do. So Paul Graham, yes, they're very prestigious investors. Y Combinator is the most prestigious startup accelerator. So, but the book was a collection of interviews that Jessica did with like the founders of about 30 different companies.
All YC companies?
No.
Okay.
So this was very early in YC.
Okay.
YC started in 2005, and this was written, I think, just a couple years after.
Okay.
Like 2007 maybe. So, and I could be wrong about that date that it was written, but no, not Y Combinator companies. So some of the companies included like Apple. So they interviewed Steve Wozniak.
Wow.
She interviewed the founders of PayPal. So some like big iconic companies.
Yeah.
And then others like, do you remember Lycos?
Lycos. Go get
go
it.
get it,
That's
boy.
all I
Yeah.
remember. It was like a black dog. It was a search engine.
Search engine,
Yeah.
right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I had to like talk it through for
There you
myself.
go. And then this one, do you remember Hot or Not?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh.
I mean, I guess you'd consider it a startup. It was a website.
Did that go places?
I mean, it was very popular for a time. I think it was one of the most popular sites on the internet. I think it was. I don't know how long that lasted, but long enough to make it into the book.
It was
It's an interesting story.
I mean, it was around the time that book was probably published that like Hot or Not was making its rounds.
I think it was a little earlier. It was like early 2000s.
Okay, yeah.
Hot or Not was created.
That tracks.
Maybe 2000.
Because I want to say like my freshman and sophomore year of college, I just remember like I would go to my friends' dorms, most of them who were guys, and they would just like mindlessly be like rating if these random pictures were hot or not. I'm like, this is what we're doing.
Right before Facebook launched, and then they quickly moved over to Facebook, and they could actually find the girls at their own college.
I know. That's so true, right?
And that's what happened to Hot or Not. So this book, when I read it, I didn't know startups at that point like I did once I picked up this book. And sort of like the allure of early stage startups, like just getting off the ground. Like to me, that was like the most exciting thing that I had ever read about.
Oh, wow.
So like, somebody else who, might be into actors or like, Hollywood or Taylor Swift, reality television, right?
Yeah.
For me, that's like founders.
Oh.
I like
that's what you fangirl over?
Yeah, exactly. So like I read those stories and I just thought that was so cool. So, and there's a quote from the book, from the introduction of the book. It says, "Some kind of magic happens in startups, especially at the very beginning, but the only people there to see it are the founders." Which I think is such a great quote.
Yeah.
And having been through startups myself, I think it's true. I think you don't necessarily know that it's magic when it's happening.
Of course, no. It's probably stressful and like all the unknowns.
Most of the time, it's pretty terrible.
Right, I'm sure. Yeah.
Especially since most startups fail.
Yes, yeah. I was going to say, as most great stories start, they're like terrible and miserable and stressful.
Exactly. So the reason I bring this up is some of the segments that we're going to do on the podcast are really startup stories. We haven't done as many of them yet. I can't believe we're on episode 7 and it's really the first, we've
scratched the surface on some like startups.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
we haven't done like a deep dive.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to do more of those.
Okay.
Because I like them and I hope other people do too, because otherwise, you know, our audience will just keep shrinking and I'll just be talking to myself. But
that's okay.
the first startup that I want to talk about is Twitch.
Oh, yep. That is big in the world that I am not a part of.
Well, actually, same here. So I didn't pick Twitch because I use it. I'm not a huge gamer. I liked video games when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It was something my brothers and I did a lot of. But, you know, I'm ever since probably high school, you know, I haven't really been into video games.
Yeah, and it's evolved since high school.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's way too many buttons on the controller now for me. I like the old, PlayStation controller. That you started to have a bunch of buttons. I like the old Nintendo controller.
Atari joystick.
No, like, I liked the Nintendo controller. You had your pad, like your directional pad, and you had an A and a B, and then you had like the start and select in the middle, and that was it.
Can I just tell you, like, I did not grow up with video games, even like as a child. Like, I would do computer games, if anything, but we like never had any consoles or anything. So even the A and the B and like, I don't know what's what, and I get very confused when you all play.
Well, when you play for hundreds or thousands of hours as a child, you figure out which one's A and which one's B, or you lose to Glass Joe every time in Punch-Out. And that's just not something that you can do and still have any self-respect in your household.
Okay. Oh, okay. Glass Joe. All right. Yeah. Mental note. Don't lose to him.
So we'll get into, like, I think it'll become clearer why I picked Twitch as the story unfolds. But I just kind of want to tell the story of Twitch and the founders of Twitch.
All right.
Okay. The story of Twitch starts out like any great startup story.
Cocaine and lollipops.
Yes. Cocaine
in my mind.
and lollipops. No, I'm just kidding. Not all startup stories start out like this, but the story of Twitch starts out with a couple of kids playing video games together.
Oh, very similar to your story.
Exactly. But I didn't go on to found this
crazy
billion-dollar company.
When the road divided, you went one way and they went the other way.
Not yet, anyway.
Okay.
So Justin Kahn and Emmett Shear, they grew up in the Seattle area, and they met each other when they were in second grade. This had to be about 1990.
Okay.
So
yeah,
they're a little older than we are.
Yeah, the great decade.
Just a little. And they lived a few blocks from each other.
Okay.
So they were, visiting each other's houses. And Emmett even said in an interview that I read that he used to like spending more time at Justin's house because Justin's parents let him have video games.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that was me. Oh, I was Emmett.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Your parents weren't fans of the video games.
No. And I would go to my friends' houses who had like Duck Hunt and like
or even cable.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. We were late to the cable game at my house, but we got it just in time for the new Mickey Mouse Club. Anyway, I digress.
Well, how cool is that
yeah,
they started out playing video games together,
yeah,
and this evolved into what is now the largest online gaming streaming company. So they were friends throughout high school, and they both ended up at Yale. This wasn't planned.
Okay.
That they ended up at Yale, but they both were accepted, and that's where they both decided to go. And so they stayed friends in college. Emmett was a computer science major, and Justin studied physics and philosophy.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That is not anything about...
No, he wasn't technical.
Okay.
So yeah, he didn't know how to code at this point. So in 2005, they were graduating, and they didn't know what to do after college, like most of us when we get to college, when we're ready to graduate college.
The age-old question.
And
what do we do now?
Yeah. So a friend of theirs gave them some advice, and he said, why don't you guys start a startup?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because of like how low the opportunity cost is.
Yeah.
Like you're either going to go out and get a job, which is, probably not going to be a highly paying job. You're just out of college. If you fail starting a startup, you can live with your parents, or you can live with your parents while you're starting the startup. Like you're never going to have another chance to
Right.
have that low of an opportunity cost.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, some parents are supportive of that. Some parents are like, go find a job.
Oh yeah, no, this is nothing about the parents. Like this is the advice that their friend gave them.
Right.
It was in college with them.
But he's so wise.
No, I mean, I would give this advice to anyone who is, interested in starting a startup and can come up with some ideas, and, especially if they're technical, if they can write code. But anyway, so they decided to start a company, and so Gmail had just launched in 2004.
I remember.
Okay, yeah. So we were in college when Gmail launched. This is 2005, and Justin and Emmett made the observation that Gmail didn't have a calendar component. So Gmail was the first real in the browser Ajax-based email system. Yeah.
Right.
And Outlook, which was the standard and still is for desktop email, has a calendar component. So they said, well, why don't we build that? Okay. And they just so happened to hear about Y Combinator, which had just launched that year. This was their first batch. So they didn't have a reputation yet. So Paul Graham was out there actually emailing engineering departments at different universities.
Oh my gosh. He was the one like out there recruiting.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Because they didn't have anybody yet.
Yeah.
So they were looking for their first batch. I think they ended up having like 7 or 8 companies in that batch.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
7 or 8.
Yeah, it was tiny. So they heard about Y Combinator because Emmett was in the computer science department. So they applied. They decided to apply. Y Combinator then was in Cambridge.
Okay.
So it was closer to them anyway.
Oh, interesting.
And they got in.
Nice.
So they were one of the first companies that went through Y Combinator. Back then, Y Combinator invested $11,000 plus $3,000 per founder total. So for the two of them, it was just the two of them in this company, that was $17,000.
Oh,
so
that's cute.
not a lot of money by
no.
Today Y Combinator invests $500,000 into the companies that they invest in, but they were starting out,
right, yeah.
And to a couple of college students, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
A couple other companies in that batch, by the way, Reddit was in the first batch of Y Combinator. And Sam Altman had a company called Looped in that batch. Yeah, I think it was like a geolocation startup, but it did get acquired, I think. But he is much more famous for founding OpenAI.
Okay.
Which is the maker of ChatGPT.
Right.
He also went on to become the president and CEO of Y Combinator after Paul Graham retired.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was also in that batch.
I don't know if you know this, but like, did the second batch then, like the next year, like completely like explode because of all these like really successful companies that started?
No, because you don't know that a company is successful for a long
Several
time
years.
after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, usually most
sure.
companies take a while.
Okay.
So I think there were about the same number of companies in the second batch.
Oh, okay.
So they built the software. They called this calendar app Kiko Software. They were able to raise $100,000 after Y Combinator too, from investors.
Okay.
So they could keep it going for a while. They got covered by TechCrunch, which is the most popular tech website covering tech news and stuff.
Yeah, even I know about TechCrunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, but is it just because of me?
Maybe. My techie husband.
So they attracted something like 90,000 users shortly after launch by some of their initial PR, which is great. So, at that point, you'd think they're doing pretty well, right? Things are going to keep growing. Gmail obviously needs this counterpart tool of a calendar.
Right.
But they had some trouble continuing to attract users after the launch, which often happens. You get this big rush of users at the launch, a lot of which probably aren't even in your target market, but like your target customers, but they hear about the launch and they sign up and they try it out, and then they don't use it.
Right. It's like starting a podcast. Like you get this influx of subscribers. Like,
and
what
then
is this
they
about?
just go away.
No.
I'm just kidding. Our
not.
numbers are looking pretty good. But yeah, they had trouble keeping users active.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to really get a lot more users, which is what they were going to need if they were going to make this a scalable, venture-backed company.
Okay.
And they also didn't talk to any calendar users, which would have been
so
a
funny.
good thing to do. Yeah, they've admitted that in interviews. Like they weren't out there talking to users of calendars. They weren't calendar users themselves,
Oh my
really,
gosh.
because, they were college students. They just graduated college. Like, how much do you need a calendar? I mean, all you really care about your class schedule, and
Right,
that was probably on paper at
right.
that point.
No, that's so true.
You know?
I do remember like during one of like my first job interviews, they were like, how do you like keep your calendar organized? And I was like, I don't even use a calendar, but I had to like pretend because it was
Yeah.
for like a personal assistant for somebody.
Yeah, well, I mean, back then, probably the only people using online calendars was for work, right?
Right.
It was for your job.
Right, right.
So a year later, in April of 2006, a year after they launched, Google Calendar launched.
Oh, no.
So when they thought to themselves, you know what would be neat if Gmail had a calendar component, Google also thought that.
Yeah. Oh, they didn't think to like talk to Google about, or like, do you not do that when you have like this great idea and you don't want like, you know?
No, I mean, they wanted to build a startup to do it. I mean, maybe Google could acquire them, right? If they did it well enough instead of build their own thing, if they had done it quickly enough and got it out there and scaled to,
Right.
tens of millions of users or something like that.
Yeah. In the ideal world.
Yeah, but they didn't have a ton of users. Google could build it themselves. So they did. And about 2 months later, they realized they had no idea how to make a better product than Google.
Yeah, good thought.
And they basically just got crushed. So they shut it down. They ended up selling the domain and the code on eBay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I sold my old MP3 player on eBay when I was a kid. They sold their company, basically. They sold it for $265,000, I think, which, that's a good amount of money for a
Just out
of college student.
For
But
sure.
so they did have investors, though. So they had to pay back their investors.
Oh.
They each ended up with, I think, like $50,000 or $60,000.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's still good money for, something
Just
you
out
worked
of
on for a
college.
year. But, they would consider it a failure. It's in Silicon Valley, that's a failure to anybody in the startup world.
Right.
What would you do if you had, graduated college, went on to start a startup, had a little rough go at it, made a little money, but essentially failed. And then when you're thinking of, you didn't make enough to live off of, right? For very long.
Yeah.
So what do you do next?
I would completely pivot, do something totally different, and cry to my mom.
No, like, would you get a job?
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I meant by pivoting. Like, I wouldn't try to like.
Well, you can't say pivot because pivot in startup world means
Oh,
something completely different.
no, like pivot my life. Like,
Okay.
I would like go into like a whole different industry.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that's probably what most people would do, right? That's not what they did. So
Scrappy.
they liked it,
Yeah.
right? Like they were into it. So, not that idea, but startups.
Yeah.
So they went back to Paul Graham at YC with another idea in 2007. So the next year.
Wow, that quick.
I mean, they knew that money was going to run out fast.
Work
They're
at
probably buying
McDonald's
lots of
for a little
video
bit.
games.
Yeah.
So the idea that they first went and pitched Paul Graham at Y Combinator was a company that lets you print your blog as a coffee table book.
That's cool.
Is it?
No, well, yeah, if you think about it.
No. If you think about it more, I think it becomes less and less cool the more you think about it.
Well, I'm the type of person that like wants like, my kid's artwork in a coffee table book and like all of my, things in like a
Okay,
handy
so
decorative book.
Justin and Emmett, if you're listening and you still want to start that company, my wife will buy the coffee table book. She doesn't have a blog, so it'll have to be something else. She could also get her pictures turned into a book by 1,000 other companies right now, but she wants your startup.
You have an investor in me.
So Paul Graham told them that's a terrible idea, and he said, what else do you have, basically?
Okay.
You got any other ideas? And this isn't to say that Paul Graham only has great ideas. Another thing that Emmett said was some of Paul Graham's ideas were also terrible, but they were great starting points. So the only other thing they had in mind was an idea for streaming Justin's life on the internet.
Like what kind of life? Like the startup life?
No, like his personal life.
Oh.
They said, what if we attached a camera to Justin and recorded everything that he did all day, every day, put that on the internet?
Oh, wow.
And Y Combinator said, yeah, we'll fund that.
They'll fund that and not the coffee table book.
So
they must have like really wanted to see something in his life.
good investors in early stage companies don't necessarily take the idea as the idea that it initially starts as.
Okay. They see the potential, you mean?
They look at the market that you're in. They look at what that idea could become if creative, hardworking, technical founders, somebody who can actually build things, what that could become if they spend some time on it.
Okay.
So obviously Paul Graham and the other Y Combinator partners saw some potential in this.
Yeah.
I don't think they necessarily thought this was, this idea was going to be a billion-dollar company, which is, why they were investing in companies. But it was in the ballpark of something that sounded interesting and could turn into something big, right? And I think one of the reasons for that was that really the capability to do this type of thing that they were talking about was really just becoming possible. There was no way that the average person could live stream anything on the go anywhere, like anywhere they wanted to go at that point.
Right.
It wasn't possible, which we'll talk about in a second. But it wasn't just the two of them that started this company. They brought on some additional co-founders. One of their co-founders was Michael Seibel.
I know that name.
He went on to become the CEO of YC.
Okay.
So he was a friend from Yale.
Okay.
They brought him on. They said he was a calm, intelligent person, and he could help focus the team and sort of like not jump at like all the shiny objects.
Yeah.
So while they were working on Kiko software, they built and launched 6 other products. Like when that wasn't, just while they were working on it, it was kind of, they weren't sure if it was going to work or not. And like when one wouldn't like immediately take off, they just would move on to the next one. So they thought he could maybe help with that. And they also brought on another founder because they realized, or they knew this, I think, that none of them knew how to actually build the technology that they needed to do this whole live streaming thing that they were talking about.
Oh, so it was just like a concept.
Yeah, it was just a concept. So what they did was to find somebody, because they also didn't know anybody that could do this, that would be a founder with them. So they emailed the MIT engineering listserv, basically with like a job posting for somebody to be a founder on their team. And they went to MIT and they interviewed this guy named Kyle Vogt. Okay. He was a computer science and electrical engineering major at MIT.
Okay.
So just thinking back to like this time, this was 2007, the first iPhone wasn't released until June 2007.
Oh, wow.
And it couldn't record video.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. Like I didn't have the iPhone.
No,
like
I didn't realize.
I don't know if you had it that early.
Yeah.
But so the first iPhone that could record video didn't come out till 2009.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, there weren't smartphones like doing this back then. There certainly weren't good enough cellular networks to stream. So you had to figure out a way to sort of like MacGyver something together. And that's what they needed Kyle to do. So when Justin and Emmett finished interviewing Kyle, they flew back out to San Francisco. And when they landed, they had an email from Kyle with a design basically for all of the specs for what they needed for their like theoretical live streaming camera.
Okay.
So they decided, all right, this is our guy.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So they brought Kyle on board. So there were the 4 of them. And in March 2007, they launched Justin TV.
That's what they decided
to call it. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was Justin Khan's life on the internet, and they called it Justin TV.
Okay. All right.
Kind of like the Truman Show, except Justin knew that he was being filmed.
Right. Was Justin like famous at this point? Like, was he somebody that people would want to watch his life stream?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, he wasn't famous at all. Nobody outside of his group of friends and family knew who he was. So we'll get there too. So what they did was he wore a baseball hat with a camera attached to it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This was the prototype that this MIT guy drew up.
I mean, it
was able to stream. I get like the whole technicality of it, but like.
Well, that's not the only thing. He had to wear a backpack.
Oh.
Because he needed a place to store the laptop that the camera was connected
and, like,
to.
Battery.
And the battery. Yeah. And extra battery so it could last while he was, enough time that he was out. And that's how it worked.
I would not trust this guy if he walked into a store. I'd be like, what's in the backpack? Like, what, because this isn't something that's like normal.
Yeah. No, not, well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly unconventional for the time. Now it's like everyone's out there filming everything and they don't need all this equipment. You just need your phone. But so I was curious, like how Emmett and Justin initially decided that like it would be Justin's life that they would put on the internet. Emmett said in an interview that Justin kind of always wanted to be famous.
Oh,
right.
interesting.
So to your point, like, no, he wasn't famous yet, but he kind of had that ambition. So their initial launch attracted a lot of media attention. They got on the Today Show, Nightline,
Really?
other media outlets. Yeah, I mean, it was a novel idea. Nobody else was doing this because it really just became possible. I think there was some sort of like network card that like they could just get that allowed for them to get good enough quality signal anywhere. So that, that's what they used. They had about 100,000 viewers in the first month.
Oh, wow.
So it was popular.
Yeah.
People were tuning in
Yeah.
to watch, but it was also very expensive.
Oh, I'm sure.
The bandwidth to stream that much data back then. So they raised, I think, like $350,000 total based on that initial traction that they had. And for the first 6 months, they were just filming Justin's life. That's all they did, on his camera. So like
Did this include like going to the bathroom and sleeping?
Yeah, but like, when he went in the bathroom, I think he would just like hang the hat somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So like, I think you could still hear audio, but like you couldn't see anything.
Oh,
so
gosh.
Sleeping, I think you could see him sleep.
Yeah, just like the Truman Show.
Yeah. But like also going out on dates. Like I guess he went on some dates during this time.
With that hat on?
Yeah, and like obviously he had to explain it. So like I don't think any of them went very well.
Would run the other way.
But also people people who were watching and people ended up trying to do this. They would try and spot where he was, like find out.
Yeah.
And they would do some crazy things like order like 100 pizzas and have them sent to like they figured out where he lived, I think, and they had him sent to his house.
Oh, wow.
Someone else called the cops and said that like there was a stabbing or something in his apartment and sent them to that apartment, and the cops like kicked down the door and like, yeah. So
just so they can like watch it real
yeah,
time,
so they could
like
watch
what
it.
happens.
They're basically in charge of
Oh,
the show.
Oh,
right?
that's so interesting.
It was not good. But, so that stuff was, that stuff probably made for interesting television, but most of his life was just pretty boring, right? Like all of our lives. Like if somebody's going to watch it nonstop, like that gets boring.
Absolutely.
So what they decided to do then when they realized, all right, this is very expensive. Our metrics are falling. People are not watching this anymore. We need to pivot, right? So we need to do something else.
Like a real pivot.
Yeah.
Not just
a startup
pivot. Yeah.
So they decided, let's open this up to everybody to be able to stream.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so at this point, people could stream. Not everybody could necessarily stream walking around everywhere like Justin could, but technology was getting better.
So they didn't all need the hats and backpacks.
No,
okay.
This was 6 months later.
I thought they had like a product line at this point.
No, but like people could stream on their webcams.
Yes.
So they opened it up to everybody. So now anybody could sign up and connect their webcam and stream whatever they wanted to. And that was more interesting to people, and it created some early internet celebrities.
This was like the rise of content creators.
So this is kind of why I wanted to talk about Twitch. So one notable content creator was iJustine. Have you ever heard of her?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
So she was one. I remember hearing of her. I didn't really know what she did. She's still out there now. She's on YouTube, but people were doing things like street art. People hosted their own talk shows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The Justin TV founders streamed themselves playing Call of Duty.
Okay.
So, that was their thing. They were like, oh, let's hook this up and maybe, people watch us play video games. They raised a couple $1 million shortly after that pivot. And then they raised another $6 million in 2008. And they needed that money because this was still very expensive with all these people, streaming. These costs added up. And fortunately for them, they raised this money right before the financial crisis because then it got very difficult to raise funding.
Right.
And they still weren't making any money. So they had no way of monetizing all this content.
Oh, wow.
At this point. They were burning money very fast. And they were running out of money.
Okay.
They actually had a sign in their office that started out saying 6 months to bankruptcy.
Oh, my gosh.
To communicate to themselves and their employees at this time that, things were pretty dire. Like, we've got to do something and we have to do it fast. So, and they kept counting it down. 5 months, 4 months.
Wow, so they were months.
Oh, and they got to as low as 8 weeks from running out of cash and going bankrupt. And they decided, well, let's just try and monetize this any way we can. I think they were initially worried about like hurting the user experience if they did it wrong. So they put up Google AdWords so they could get ad revenue from the site.
Yeah.
They decided to charge for their mobile app, which now like nobody would charge for a social network mobile app, right? Because that's just going to limit your growth, but they had to.
Right.
So they did. And they cut costs wherever they could. And at this point, they had around 50 million users a month. So it was pretty huge.
Yeah. Wow.
And by doing these things, they finally became profitable just in time. But that didn't solve their problems. One of their biggest problems was that they ran into a lot of legal trouble. Do you have any idea why they might have faced some legal challenges?
Were people like streaming like illegal, like using music, like copyrighted music and stuff?
Yeah, well, it was mostly live sporting events.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
But
even
yes,
that.
yes, they were streaming copyrighted content, media.
Right.
That was very popular on the site. And they had to try and shut it down whenever they could, but they couldn't keep up with it. And so they realized that was a problem. But then also their growth had just stalled. You know, at this point, the internet was growing like crazy. Millions and millions of people were coming on the internet every month that were never on the internet, and they weren't growing at all. So basically, if you're not growing and the internet is growing, like they were dying. Like they felt like they were dying.
Yeah. Start like dwindling.
Yeah. I mean, they had paywalls up on their app, so that's obviously going to limit user growth. They had ads up, which was going to hurt the user experience. So they knew they had to make another change. But they couldn't really decide and agree on what that change was. So two of the founders had different ideas for the direction that the company should go.
Okay.
So they decided to try two different things at once, basically like experiments. And they figured they would give each idea 6 months, and whichever one hit its growth targets over those 6 months, they would pivot the company and do that.
Okay.
The two founders that had these ideas were one, Michael Seibel. He thought it was obvious that mobile apps were going to become massive, and they weren't at the time yet. And nobody had really done video for mobile well yet. At this point, Instagram still didn't have videos.
Right.
It wasn't until, I think, 2013 that Instagram supported videos. There was no Meerkat or Periscope or Snapchat yet. And Michael argued that mobile video was going to be huge and wanted to pivot the company to focus on that. So the other idea came from Emmett.
Okay.
Emmett realized that there was this segment of users that it wasn't the biggest segment of users, but they were passionate users, and it was something that he could understand why people were excited about it. And so he was sort of passionate about it. And that was video game streamers.
Oh, probably took him back to being 7 again.
Exactly. So there were only, at this point, it was something like 50 or 100 video game streamers on the site.
Oh, wow. So not a huge population.
But maybe about 500,000 users watching those streamers. And they were the only streams that he personally watched on the site.
Oh, that's
so he was into it.
Yeah, right.
So for one, Emmett really enjoyed watching and engaging with the other gamers on what was Justin TV at this point.
Yeah.
And he believed that there had to be more people like him and more than just what was on the platform already.
Right.
And he thought that this was a growing space. And he had a core insight about this space that unlike movies or music or sports, where the creators have an incentive to keep it off your platform because they don't get anything out of it if you are showing their live sporting event on your free platform and they don't have to purchase it. Video game creators are all for you broadcasting someone playing their game, because that doesn't mean I'm playing the game.
Right.
That means I'm more likely to buy the game because I'm seeing you playing it and having fun with it and engaging in it.
Yeah.
So it's like free advertising.
Right. Like they're demoing a game and you're like, ooh, I wonder if I can like reach that level.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
They weren't going to shut them down for video game streaming like these other forms of media were. So in June of 2011, they moved the video game streaming section to a new site called Twitch TV.
Okay.
And that's how Twitch was born.
Got it.
So those are the two ideas. So Michael's spinoff was called Social Cam.
Okay.
So this is the mobile video startup.
Yep.
After 6 months, it attracted a bunch of users, but it wasn't growing nearly as much as Twitch. Twitch crushed its goals.
Wow.
You know, they had kind of both placed bets on these different projects, right? So Michael became the CEO of Social Cam, and that ended up getting acquired by Autodesk in July of 2012.
Okay.
For $60 million.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was a successful exit.
Yeah.
It only had 4 employees. I found a quote from Michael at the time where he said something like, videos, unlike photos, there isn't the same type of instant gratification when sharing a video. And perhaps more importantly, people aren't yet used to videography. And there's a considerable learning curve to making video look good.
Yeah.
So in a sense, he was too early.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because,
he was ahead of his time.
Yeah, exactly. Because obviously, not too many years later, video took off.
Right, right.
Like, have you ever heard of social cam?
I haven't.
Okay,
no.
yeah. So I hadn't either. I mean, I wouldn't have if I didn't know this story either. Right? It was nothing I ever used.
But now the video like sharing platforms are also, they have capabilities that make it really easy to edit and like do these like different effects to make them engaging videos. So like that might have also been the component that he was missing in social cam, is like the editing, like easy editing.
Maybe. I'm sure the product wasn't Instagram, right? But and then you had Twitch, right? Where Emmett, Justin, and Kyle stayed working on Twitch. Okay. They talked to their users. So this is one of the things they learned when they were working on Kiko, right?
Talk to your users.
Yeah. So they talked to their users, and this is like core YC advice as well. And what their users said, and this is something that Emmett had no idea that this is what the users would want at all. They wanted to be paid. Like they wanted to make money for streaming. And the reason he didn't think that they would want it was because all they would be making at the time, based on their numbers and like what Twitch could afford to pay them, was like a couple bucks a month.
Oh, wow. So
he was like, so like you're telling me you would want to get paid even if it was just like $2 or $3 a month. And they said, yeah, we just think it would be cool to make money, any money, to play video games.
Wow.
So they did that. So they decided like, all right, we're going to pay our content creators, our streamers, for playing video games. And the streamers loved it. So they built out more features, like engagement features. They built out the chat features because the viewers liked to engage with the players, like the video game players. And they also liked impacting the content that they were watching, right? So like if they were talking to somebody, maybe they could,
go to
whatever.
The right.
Yeah.
Don't open that door.
And so those people were using it not just to watch, but for the community.
Yeah.
Right? They're talking to the
that's cool.
creator. And like for them, these are maybe kind of like celebrities who are playing these video games. Right. And they would go on to become, some of them, go on to become celebrities, basically. At this point, there were competitors, not many, but there were some competitors. There was one called Ustream. So they actually paid some popular streamers like $1,000 to switch from Ustream to Twitch because why not? Like there's $1,000 and we're going to pay you on Twitch. So all these bets really paid off. Twitch grew to 20 million users by 2013.
Wow.
So just the video game section.
Yeah.
But they kind of struggled to raise money. So at this point, it had been almost 7 years since they started Justin TV, and it had just been a grind. The company almost failed multiple times. VCs thought it was too niche or like it wasn't going to keep growing. Like you've already got the entire population on the planet that is interested in video game streaming on your site is, I think, effectively what they must have thought.
Right.
So in 2014, they got some pretty good offers to buy the company.
Oh.
And they decided to sell to Amazon in 2014.
Oh, yes.
For $970 million.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Today, there are 140 million monthly active users on Twitch.
Wow.
So those investors who didn't think it had any more room to grow at 20 million in 2013, they were slightly off.
Yeah, right.
I just think it's so fascinating that this idea, like nobody would have thought of this idea.
Yeah.
Like even the founders of Twitch didn't have this idea. Like this idea, they wouldn't have come up with this if they didn't start Justin TV.
Yeah, I know, which is so like far from what they ended up with.
Right. Yeah, which that's one of the amazing things about startups to me.
Yeah.
But not all of the founders were still with Twitch at the time that they sold. So Michael had left, right? And he founded Social Cam, which had its own exit. Obviously, he was still a founder. He still had stake in the company. Justin Kahn actually left the company shortly after the pivot to Twitch.
Oh, interesting.
In 2011 or 2012, he left. He said he kind of felt like it was Emmett's project. Emmett was the one really into the video game streaming site. And at the time, Justin kind of wanted to be CEO of a company himself. And Emmett was the one who ended up becoming CEO at Twitch. And he didn't feel like he was having a big enough impact. Like Emmett kind of had things there like under control.
Right.
So he wanted to kind of go start his own things. So Justin went on, he has started a few other companies since then. Maybe we'll talk about some of them in another episode.
Yeah.
He's now a YouTube creator, actually.
Okay,
So if
okay.
anybody wants to check him out and doesn't know of him, he's pretty popular on YouTube. And Michael, I talked about, he went on to start Social Cam. After that, he became CEO of Y Combinator. He's still at Y Combinator as a partner.
Did you meet him when you were in YC?
I did. Yeah, he was there. He was there when
That's
I was at Y Combinator. Actually, he was one of the partners that interviewed me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Another topic for a future episode.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
And lastly, Kyle, the electrical and computer
Yes.
engineering
Yeah.
whiz.
Yeah. The baseball backpack.
Right, the
inventor.
creator. So he actually left Twitch in the fall of 2013 to found a company called Cruise, which was a self-driving car startup.
Oh, is that what all the big self-driving cars in Silicon Valley are?
Not all of them. So Cruise, we could probably do another episode just on Cruise if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Maybe we will.
Yeah.
But only a few years after founding Cruise, with Justin Kahn's brother, by the way,
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
What entrepreneurial
Yeah.
family.
they sold to GM for over $1 billion.
That's awesome.
So
Good for
Kyle
them.
has basically $2 billion exits
Oh, you go,
under his
Kyle.
belt,
Yeah.
which is pretty amazing. Emmett stayed on as the CEO at Twitch until March 2023. So just earlier
Oh,
this year,
wow.
he retired from Twitch.
Oh my gosh.
So,
wow. What
yeah.
a story.
I know,
mean,
isn't that cool? I mean,
yeah.
in 2017, there was a report by Superdata that found that more people watch gaming videos and streams than HBO, Netflix, ESPN, and Hulu combined.
Get out. Seriously.
Isn't that nuts? Like,
That is.
for most of the world's population, you could never imagine that being a thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine there are that many people out there watching video games, but that is a huge number of people.
That is. I know. Well, I mean, when you think about video games and like creators of video games, and the only reason why I know this is because of a book that I had just finished reading called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And I did not know if I would like it. It's like a huge book, like a lot of people are reading it. It's my new favorite book now. It's about video game creators. So I did not know if I would like it or not. But the backstory and the content that they put into video games and the story behind video games, the characters that they develop
Yeah.
and create, like there's a whole deeper level to it that I'm sure, video game fanatics see that, and that's why they watch these like people live stream video games,
Yeah.
because it's just like it's a whole culture, which
Definitely
is something
is.
that I just learned about.
Who knew we'd both be talking about our favorite books on this podcast?
I know. Yeah.
It was not planned.
Hey, Tony,
Hey, May.
do you know what time it is?
I think I do.
It's time for the Hot Mom of the Week.
Yeah, whoa, last time I checked, I'm still hot, real hot.
Okay, we talked about maybe the two most random things, which is ghost kitchens and then ultimately Twitch and video gaming.
Right.
But it didn't take me long to like instantly think about who our Hot Mom of the Week that we're going to feature is.
That's why I love you.
And it's somebody that I've been already following. Her name is Alissa Nguyen. Her handle is at gaming_foodie
What?
on both TikTok and Instagram. I mean,
There's not someone called that.
no, yeah, it's gaming foodie. And it's like, okay. So she is a real and relatable foodie influencer who posts videos making Korean and Vietnamese recipes traditionally.
She also just happens to play video games.
Well, so the video game part of it, I think, is her husband, who I cannot for the life of me figure out what he does. So he apparently is the gaming part of her handle. He really loves video games. I don't know any more about him than that. He only like makes appearances on her videos like with the back of his head or his arm. Like sometimes like he's playing video games and like she'll serve him or she'll like bring him the food and you only see his arm. He's very mysterious to me. So
He's like Wilson in Home Improvement.
Yes, yeah. You only see part of him. But apparently he's the gaming part of her her name. But what I really love about her, and what she also kind of reminds me of the topics that we were talking about, is she will film herself like real life, almost like Justin TV, like unedited. You get what you get. So she wasn't always like that. She started her gaming foodie account in 2019, and she was in an interview saying that she always tried to be this like cookie cutter mom. She would apparently wake up at like 2 or 3 a.m. before like her kids would wake up, and like chaos would kind of ensue. And she would like carefully script and record her voiceovers. But she noticed that her channel wasn't really growing. So the turning point for her was when in 2021, she moved from California to Texas because of her husband's new job, which I still don't know what it is. And so she didn't have family nearby to help with childcare anymore. So it was basically just like her and her children. And she was forced to like embrace the messiness of everyday life. And, you know, she just like kind of hit record and filmed herself, you know, making a recipe with like the kids screaming in the background, you know, the food like over boiling, things like that. Like, she's real, she's unedited. It says like when she burns her food, she doesn't edit it out. She also doesn't use like high end ingredients like caviar and truffles and like expensive things. Like she's just a very,
I mean, who uses
real
caviar
person
like
there's
on
some,
a daily basis?
There's some content creators where that's like their brand, you know, just like high end things. But she knows that like her style of content is not perfect, and that's kind of been her brand now, and she's embraced it. So sometimes like even her head will like be cut off, and that's okay. She just like rolls with it. At one point, I think like she accidentally, like early on, she accidentally slipped and like let her true personality show. Like she kind of uses like silly like, you know, phrases for ingredients, or, you know, she'll have this like really comical laugh, and it just kind of comes out naturally. And she's like, whatever, that's who I am, like love it or leave it. And people loved it. And so now she loved it, and to the point where 1.2 million people also loved it. And that's her following on Instagram at this point. And another thing that she said, like she just, she wanted to stop comparing herself to creators in their 20s and their 30s who don't have young children. So she was cool with like being able to be like, hey, I'm a mom, I cook, and these are my kids running around. And like sometimes like she'll show them on her videos and stuff. And I don't know, and her food looks really good. I've actually made a couple things from her TikToks that turned out really great.
That's awesome. I think one of the funny things is for Justin TV, so Justin Kahn and Emmett Shear thought it might be interesting to record Justin's entire life, right, and live stream it. And what it turns out is that people want to watch very specific parts of your life. If you think about all the creators out there today,
that's true,
right? You've got all these different segments. Like you've got Alissa, the gaming foodie. Like people want to watch her cook.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't want to watch her, you know, get in her car and then drive her kids to school, and then, you know, every day, and then drive her kid, and then, you know, whatever, and unboxers or whatever. People, they just want to see you open packages or whatever. Like it's crazy what kind of insight would it have taken to know that that's exactly what people want to watch on the internet.
No, that's so true. And it's really great when you see content creators recognize what it is that people do want to see in their lives, and they really like latch onto that, and they embrace that as their brand. I've seen other creators just like be this hodgepodge of things. Like sometimes they're making a recipe, sometimes they're singing a parody song, and like they just don't know what it is that they want to be and what they want to do. And, you know, you gotta give it to the people who see what relates to their audience early on, and just embrace it and make it really cool. So
yeah, I think the only people who are making it as the, you know, let's watch everything I do is like the Kardashians, or like someone who's you know, super famous already, and you know, you want to see what, well, I don't, but like some segment of the population wants to see what they're doing all the time. But that wasn't Justin Kahn, right? And that's not us.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, so that is Alissa Nguyen at gaming_foodie. Follow her on Instagram and TikTok. She is definitely our hot mom of the week. I love her so much.
Well, that's all we've got today. If you enjoyed the episode, hit the subscribe button.
And reach out on social media.
.coms
And Hot Moms.
signing off.